The night before her dream wedding, Sarah Harper's world shattered. The man she had trusted with her heart was caught in the arms of another woman. But the betrayal wasn't the worst part. Daniel never planned to marry her. He was going to leave her at the altar, humiliate her in front of everyone she loved. 1 year later, Sarah has rebuilt herself. But just when she thought she had moved on, an unexpected invitation arrives. Daniel is getting married, again. With her new love by her side, she walks into the wedding, turning every head in the room. But what happens next? The room buzzed with excitement, laughter, the soft clinking of champagne glasses, the rustling of fabric as Sarah's bridesmaids fussed over last-minute wedding details. The golden glow of the hotel suite made everything feel warm, dreamlike, as if she were floating in a bubble of happiness. Sarah sat in front of the mirror, absently twirling the diamond ring on her finger. It still didn't feel real. In less than 24 hours, she would walk down the aisle and become Sarah Bennett, Mrs. Daniel Bennett, the love of her life, the man who had promised her forever. Her wedding dress hung by the window, its delicate ivory fabric catching the soft evening light. She glanced at it, smiling to herself, her heart swelling with anticipation. Everything was perfect. Rachel, her maid of honor, flopped onto the couch with a contented sigh. "All right, bride-to-be, how are we feeling? Cold feet? Panic attacks? Or still floating on cloud nine?" Sarah let out a small laugh, shaking her head. "No cold feet, just happy." She picked up her phone, unlocking the screen. And exhausted. Daniel's probably already asleep. He said he had an early night planned. "Ugh, typical groom," Megan chimed in, pouring herself another glass of champagne. "Meanwhile, we're over here making sure every last bow and flower is in place. Men have it so easy." Sarah smiled, ignoring the teasing. She typed out a quick message to Daniel, her fingers moving effortlessly over the screen. "I love you. Can't wait to be your wife tomorrow." She hit send and set the phone down, still grinning. Her stomach fluttered with that familiar warmth, the one she always felt when she thought about Daniel. Their love story had been straight out of a movie, full of late-night drives, whispered confessions, and promises that had felt too big to be real. But they were real. He was real. A minute passed, then another. No reply. Rachel noticed and nudged her playfully. "Oh, come on. Don't start overanalyzing. He's probably asleep or—" Sarah's phone buzzed. Her heart leapt, expecting to see Daniel's name, but the screen showed something else. Unknown number. Her smile faltered. A tiny prickle of unease ran up her spine. "Who's that?" Megan asked, peeking over her shoulder. Sarah frowned. "I don't know." She hesitated, then tapped the message open. "Before you say, I do, you should see this." Her fingers froze. The message came with an attachment. A video. Her breath caught in her throat. "What the hell?" Rachel leaned closer. "That's creepy. Probably some dumb prank." Sarah's pulse pounded in her ears. Her instincts screamed at her to ignore it, to toss the phone aside and laugh it off. But her curiosity, her unease, wouldn't let her. Hands slightly shaky, she tapped the video. The screen flickered to life. A dimly lit hotel room. At first, the image was blurry, shadows moving, indistinct shapes shifting against the soft glow of a bedside lamp. Then, the camera adjusted, and suddenly it was clear. Daniel, half-dressed, Emily, his ex. Their bodies intertwined. Sarah's entire world cracked open. She stopped breathing. A rush of blood filled her ears, a sickening ringing sound drowning out everything else. Her grip on the phone tightened as the video played on, each second stabbing her deeper, confirming what she was desperate not to believe. Emily's arms looped around Daniel's neck, pulling him closer. His hands rested on her waist, fingers digging in like they had once done to Sarah. Their lips met, lingering, slow, the kind of kiss that wasn't just a mistake, the kind that meant something. Sarah's stomach twisted violently. No. This wasn't happening. She hit pause, stared at the frozen frame, the undeniable evidence of betrayal. Rachel's voice cut through the haze, sharp and alarmed. "Sarah, what is it? What's wrong?" Sarah couldn't answer, couldn't form words. Her hands felt numb, her chest hollow, like the air had been knocked from her lungs. Rachel snatched the phone from her grasp. One look at the screen and her face darkened, her mouth falling open. "Oh my God." Megan rushed over, peering at the video. "Wait, is that? No way." Sarah shot to her feet so fast her chair nearly toppled over. She couldn't be here, couldn't sit in this room surrounded by laughter and champagne, while her entire world was falling apart. Without thinking, she grabbed her keycard and rushed for the door. "Sarah, wait, where are you going?" Rachel called after her, but Sarah didn't stop. She had to see him, had to hear him deny it. Because if he didn't, if he admitted it, then everything she believed in, everything she had built her life around, had been a lie. Sarah's heels clicked sharply against the polished hotel hallway as she stormed toward Daniel's room. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, drowning out the world around her. Her hands trembled, not from fear, not from sadness, but from the sheer force of the emotions crashing through her all at once. Rage, disbelief, betrayal. Her mind raced, latching onto desperate explanations. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe it was an old video. Maybe Daniel wasn't the man in that room. Maybe it was some cruel joke. But deep down, in the pit of her stomach, she knew. Her grip tightened around her keycard as she reached his door. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts. Every part of her screamed to turn back, to not see it for herself. But she had to. She swiped the keycard. The door clicked open, and there he was, Daniel. Half-dressed, sitting against the headboard, his hair messy, the scent of expensive cologne and stale regret hanging in the air. The sheets were rumpled. A half-empty glass of whiskey sat on the nightstand, and next to him, Emily. She was draped over him like she belonged there, her blonde hair spilling over his bare shoulder, the silk sheet barely covering her. For a moment, the world tilted. Sarah could hear the sound of her own breathing, sharp and uneven. She could feel her heartbeat pounding against her ribs, a caged thing desperate to break free. Daniel's gaze flickered toward her, unreadable. Then he sighed, like she was an inconvenience. "Sarah," he muttered, rubbing his temple. "You shouldn't be here." She let out a breath, a shaky, bitter laugh escaping before she could stop it. "Oh, I shouldn't be here." Her voice wavered, caught between disbelief and rage. "That's funny, Daniel, because last time I checked, we were getting married tomorrow." Emily shifted, not even bothering to cover herself properly. "Well, technically you were supposed to get married," she said, her tone syrupy sweet, laced with something cruel. "Looks like plans changed." Sarah's nails dug into her palms. "Don't react. Don't give her the satisfaction." Daniel ran a hand through his hair, the way he always did when he was trying to act like things weren't as bad as they seemed. "Just listen, okay?" His voice dipped into that calm, reasonable tone he always used when he was trying to smooth things over. "I had a few drinks and Emily showed up." Emily let out a soft, amused sound. "Oh, come on, Danny. Don't downplay it now." Sarah's stomach lurched at the nickname, Danny, the way she said it, like it was a private joke, a secret language between them. Emily smirked, tilting her head as she lazily trailed her fingers down Daniel's chest. "You weren't complaining earlier." Sarah felt something snap inside her. "You're disgusting," she spat, turning to Daniel. "Both of you." Emily just shrugged, unbothered. "You should be thanking me, honestly. Better you find out now rather than after you sign the marriage certificate." Sarah's fingers twitched at her sides. She wanted to slap her. God, she wanted to slap her. The urge was so strong, her hand actually lifted half an inch. Emily must have noticed because she raised an eyebrow, amused, daring her. And for one brief, blinding second, Sarah considered it. Considered giving Emily exactly what she wanted. A reaction, a moment of weakness, proof that she was the fragile, broken woman they both wanted her to be. But she wouldn't. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Slowly, deliberately, she lowered her hand, forcing her breathing to steady. Daniel sighed again, rubbing his face. "I was going to tell you tomorrow." Sarah flinched. Tomorrow. He was going to let her wake up on their wedding day, put on the dress, walk down the aisle, only to humiliate her in front of everyone. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let the tears fall. Instead, she reached for her engagement ring, the symbol of every promise he had made to her. She slid it off her finger, the metal suddenly feeling too heavy, too suffocating. She stepped forward, her heels clicking against the floor, and placed the ring on the nightstand, right between them. Then she turned to Emily. "You always wanted what was mine," she said quietly. "Now you can have him." Emily's smirk flickered just for a second. Daniel shifted like he wanted to say something, but Sarah was already gone. She didn't look back, and Daniel, he didn't even try to stop her. The morning light streamed through the curtains, casting a soft glow across the bridal suite. Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the wedding dress still hanging by the window. It looked different now, less like a dream, more like a cruel reminder of everything that was supposed to happen today. Her bridesmaids tiptoed around the room, whispering, uncertain. No one knew what to say. Rachel finally spoke, hesitantly. "Sarah, you don't have to do this." Sarah exhaled slowly. She didn't know why she was doing this either. Maybe she wanted to prove something, to herself, to the guests, to Daniel. Maybe she just didn't want to hide. Her hands felt steady as she slipped on the dress. The silk hugged her frame perfectly, just as it had in the final fitting. It still fit. It still looked beautiful, but it wasn't for Daniel anymore. It was for her. The car ride to the venue was quiet. Her father sat beside her, hands clasped together, jaw tight. He was furious. She could feel it in the way he barely spoke, in the way his knee bounced anxiously. She wasn't sure if he was more angry at Daniel or at her for still going. The venue looked breathtaking, just as she had planned. The floral arrangements, the candles lining the aisle, the soft hum of guests chatting in the background. A perfect wedding, except for one thing. Daniel wasn't there. Her breath hitched, but she forced herself to keep walking. Heads turned as she stepped inside, the train of her dress trailing behind her. Whispers, confused murmurs. Did something happen? I saw Daniel's parents, but not him. Maybe he's just running late. Oh God, do you think she got left at the altar? A sharp pain stabbed at her chest, but she swallowed it down. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of a scene. Her father stood beside her, his large, steady hand resting on her arm. She hadn't noticed until now that he'd been gripping it a little tighter than usual, like he was holding her together. Sarah. His voice was quiet, firm. We don't have to do this. She turned to him, her breath unsteady. If we leave now, he continued, his eyes searching hers, you don't have to face this. We can get in the car and just go. You don't owe anyone a performance. Sarah let out a slow, shaky breath. She wanted to say yes, wanted to turn around and disappear, leave this day behind like a bad dream. But something in her, something stubborn, something proud, something tired of running, refused. She shook her head. No, I have to go in. Her father sighed, his jaw tightening, but he nodded. He didn't like it. She could see it in his eyes, but he wouldn't stop her. With one last breath, Sarah lifted her chin and stepped forward. She kept walking, one foot in front of the other. Her father escorted her, his grip still firm around her arm, like he was afraid she might collapse. She wouldn't. She refused to. When they reached the front row, her father hesitated before letting her go. Are you sure? He murmured, one last time. Sarah gave him the smallest nod. She turned, the heavy fabric of her dress shifting around her as she lowered herself into her seat. And then, the worst moment of all, the seat beside her. Empty. It shouldn't have surprised her. She knew Daniel wasn't coming. She had known since last night. And yet, staring at that chair, that conspicuously vacant space where her future husband should have been, it hit her all over again. The weight of it, the finality, the public humiliation, people shifting in their seats, their eyes darting toward the altar, toward the man who was supposed to be standing there waiting for her. But the space was empty. A woman in the row behind her leaned forward slightly, voice gentle, but intrusive. Sweetheart, where's Daniel? Sarah's fingers curled into the fabric of her dress. For a second she thought about lying, making up some excuse, telling them he was sick, or there had been some misunderstanding. But she didn't. She just inhaled, steady and slow, and said nothing, because silence was louder. She felt the woman hesitate, then shift back in her seat, uncomfortable. Good. Sarah stared straight ahead. Her hands rested on her lap, motionless. Her breathing was even, her expression unreadable. The whispers started up again, softer this time, but she didn't listen. She wouldn't let them see her break. Someone moved beside her. A napkin appeared in front of her, offered quietly. She blinked, barely glancing to her left. A man, a stranger, or at least, that's what she thought. She didn't really see him, didn't register his face, his presence. She only saw the napkin, and without thinking, without questioning, she took it. Thank you, she murmured. She didn't notice the way he watched her, didn't notice the way his gaze lingered, something unreadable flickering in his dark eyes, before he leaned back in his seat. Nathan Carter. But today, he was just a man watching her fall apart. The days blurred together. Sarah had lost track of time. Maybe a week had passed, maybe more. It didn't matter. The only thing she knew was that she couldn't bring herself to step outside. Her once neat and cozy apartment was a mess. Takeout boxes on the counter, empty wine bottles next to the couch, unfolded laundry she hadn't touched. The curtains stayed closed. The wedding dress still hung in the closet, tucked behind layers of clothes, but she knew it was there, mocking her. Her phone had been buzzing nonstop for days. She ignored every single call, every text. Rachel, her mom, even her coworkers, they all wanted to check in, to make sure she was okay. She wasn't, but she was good at pretending, at least to herself. Her fingers mindlessly scrolled through her phone, stopping at Daniel's name. His contact still sat there, untouched. Their last text thread remained frozen in time. Daniel, can't wait to marry you, Mrs. Bennett. Sarah, you're stuck with me now. Daniel, forever, baby. She clenched her jaw, feeling a sharp sting behind her eyes. She hovered over the keyboard. Maybe she should text him. Maybe she should ask why, or scream at him, or beg him to say something, anything, that would make this pain make sense. Her fingers trembled as she typed. Daniel. Her breath caught. What was she doing? Her finger hovered over the delete contact button. Do it, Sarah. Her other hand clenched into a fist on her lap, nails digging into her palm. One tap, one press, and she could erase it all. She took a shaky breath. Then, a knock. She ignored it. Probably a neighbor, or someone delivering a package she didn't care about. Then another, louder this time. Then a voice. Sarah, Open the damn door, Rachel. Sarah exhaled, pressing the heel of her hand against her forehead. She didn't want to deal with this right now. Another knock. I swear to God, if you don't open this door, I'm using my spare key. Sarah groaned. Go away. Not happening. A pause. Then, true to her word, the sound of keys jingling, the door unlocking. Sarah barely moved as Rachel stepped inside, pausing only for a second before sighing. A deep, exhausted, exasperated sigh. Oh, honey, Rachel muttered, closing the door behind her. Sarah didn't respond. Rachel took one look at the apartment, the unopened mail on the floor, the untouched food on the counter, the wine bottles, the mess that had once been a home, and then back at Sarah. She didn't say anything at first, just walked over, grabbed Sarah's phone from her hands, and looked at the screen. Rachel's expression darkened. You're still looking at this? Sarah said nothing. Rachel huffed out a breath, sitting on the couch beside her. Okay, nope, we're done with this. Sarah tried to reach for her phone, but Rachel pulled it away, standing up and walking to the kitchen. What are you doing? Sarah mumbled. Rachel opened the fridge, grimaced at the lack of food, then walked back and tossed the phone onto the table. We're hitting rock bottom, babe, and I refuse to let you stay here. Sarah slumped back against the cushions. I don't need a lecture. Rachel folded her arms. Tough, 'cause you're getting one. Sarah sighed, staring at the ceiling. I let you have your sad, self-destructive mourning period, Rachel continued, pacing now. I let you disappear. I let you ignore my calls, let you wallow in this apartment, let you drink whatever bottle of regret juice you've been living off of. Sarah clenched her jaw, but Rachel wasn't done. But now I'm dragging you out of this hellhole you've created for yourself. Sarah closed her eyes. Rach, no, you don't get to ratch me. You don't get to sit here and pretend you're dead when you're still breathing. Rachel's voice softened, but only slightly. Do you have any idea how strong you are? How many people would have crumbled if they went through what you did? Sarah stayed quiet. Rachel sighed, running a hand through her hair. Then in a quieter voice she added, I know it hurts. I know it feels like you lost everything, but you didn't. She gestured to the mess around them. This isn't you. Sarah swallowed, her throat tight. Rachel sat down again, softer this time. You have two options, babe. You can sit here and keep drowning in memories of a guy who didn't deserve you, or, she grabbed Sarah's hands, squeezing them. You can get the hell up and take your life back. Sarah's fingers twitched, slowly, hesitantly. She looked back at her phone and picked it up. Then, with a breath, she tapped delete. Rachel smiled, squeezing her hand again. Good, now go take a shower. You smell like regret. For the first time in days, Sarah laughed. A small, broken sound, but real. And maybe, just maybe, it was the first step toward something better. Sarah smoothed the front of her blazer, inhaling deeply as she stepped into the towering glass building of Carter Enterprises. It was nothing like the small boutique firm she had worked for before. The lobby was sleek, modern, intimidating, the kind of place where people walked with purpose, where conversations were quick and efficient, where power wasn't just spoken, it was felt, the kind of place she never thought she'd belong. But Rachel had pushed her to apply, practically shoved the job listing in her face one night over takeout. You're too smart to sit around doing nothing, Sarah. You need to get back out there. And maybe Rachel was right. Maybe moving forward was the only way she'd stop looking back. Her heels clicked against the polished marble floors as she approached the front desk. The receptionist, a woman with sharp eyes and a Bluetooth headset, barely glanced up before giving a polite but clipped, "Can I help you?" Sarah adjusted the strap of her purse. Sarah Harper, I have a meeting with Mr. Carter. The woman's eyes flickered over her briefly, as if assessing whether she belonged. Then, after a quick check on her screen, she nodded. 18th floor, straight down the hall, first office on the left. Sarah murmured a thank you and made her way toward the elevators. Her fingers hovered over the button. Why did her hands feel cold? A part of her wanted to turn back, to walk out of this building, away from this new version of herself she wasn't sure she was ready for. But then she remembered the way Daniel had looked at her that night, annoyed, indifferent, like she was nothing more than an inconvenience. She squared her shoulders and pressed the button. The elevator doors slid open with a quiet chime, and she stepped inside. By the time she reached Nathan Carter's office, her nerves were buzzing under her skin. She had only met him once before, at the gala, when he had handed her that napkin. But even back then, she hadn't really seen him, not the way she should have. Now, as she walked through the glass doors of his office, she saw him clearly. Nathan Carter was sharp angles and quiet power. He didn't sit behind his desk like most CEOs. Instead, he stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, hands in his pockets, gaze fixed on the city below. He didn't look at her right away. You're late, he said, his voice smooth but firm. Sarah glanced at the clock on the wall. She was exactly on time. She bit the inside of her cheek but didn't argue. Traffic, she said instead. Nathan turned then, studying her for a second. I don't hire people who make excuses. Sarah stiffened. That wasn't an excuse. It was a fact. A flicker of something, amusement maybe, crossed his face. Good, he said. You'll need that attitude here. She exhaled slowly as he walked toward his desk, flipping through a folder. Her resume, most likely. You're overqualified for this position, he said after a moment. Sarah forced herself to hold his gaze. Is that a problem? Nathan smirked slightly, closing the folder. Not for me. Something about the way he said it sent a small shiver down her spine. She was expecting him to hand her a contract, to go over logistics, office expectations, the usual. Instead, he leaned against the desk, crossed his arms and said, Tell me something, Miss Harper. Are you here to prove something to yourself or to him? Her breath caught. She wasn't expecting that. Her fingers curled slightly, nails pressing into her palms. Nathan watched her closely. You don't have to answer that, he continued, but I hope for your sake it's the first option. Sarah forced herself to breathe, to steady herself. I'm here to work, she said simply. Nathan tilted his head slightly, as if considering that answer. Then, after a pause, he pushed the contract toward her. Then let's see what you got. The first week at Carter Enterprises was brutal. Nathan wasn't just a boss. He was a test Sarah didn't know she had signed up for. Every report she turned in, he sent it back with notes scribbled in red ink. Not strong enough. Find better sources. You can do better. Every meeting, he pushed her, questioning her decisions, making her back up every point she made. But she held her ground. Because every challenge he threw at her, every moment he tried to see if she would break, she didn't. She wasn't sure if he was doing it to test her limits, or to see if she would crack, but she wouldn't. And slowly, the rest of the office took notice. People who had originally looked at her like she was just some new hire with no real weight began to respect her. Well, most of them. Not everyone was thrilled about her presence. One afternoon, after a particularly exhausting meeting, Sarah grabbed a coffee from the break room. As she stirred in some cream, she heard it. She's only here because Carter likes her. The words were quiet, but not quiet enough. Sarah didn't react right away. She turned, coffee in hand, finding two junior executives leaning against the counter. One of them, a man named James, barely looked embarrassed. Sarah arched an eyebrow. I'm sorry. What was that? James smirked, crossing his arms. Nothing personal, Harper. Just saying. It's interesting how quickly you landed this job. Sarah let out a slow, humorless laugh. Before she could respond, another voice cut through the air. James. Nathan. His tone was calm. Too calm. James straightened immediately, his smirk faltering. Nathan took his time stepping into the break room, his gaze cool, unreadable. You have something to say about my hiring decisions? Nathan asked, his voice deadly quiet. James swallowed. No, sir, of course not. Nathan stared at him for a second longer before nodding toward the door. Good, then get back to work. James and his friend practically scrambled out of the room. Nathan turned to Sarah, his expression unreadable. People will talk, he said simply. Sarah shrugged, lifting her coffee. Let them. Nathan's lips twitched slightly. Good answer. Then just as quickly as he arrived, he was gone. Sarah exhaled, staring down at her coffee. It had been a month since she started, and every single day felt like a test. He never raised his voice, never insulted her, never did anything outright cruel, but he pushed, hard. Every report she turned in, not good enough, redo it. Every proposal, needs stronger numbers, come back when it's better. Every presentation, fine, but you can do better. It was exhausting, infuriating, and yet, she kept coming back, because the more he challenged her, the more she wanted to prove him wrong. Tonight was no different. The office was quiet, most of the employees already gone for the night. The only sound was the steady clicking of Sarah's keyboard and the faint hum of city traffic outside the glass walls. She glanced at the time, 11:47 p.m. She exhaled slowly, rubbing her temples. This was ridiculous. Across the room, Nathan was leaned back in his chair, skimming over a document with sharp, focused eyes. He hadn't spoken in nearly 20 minutes, but his presence was impossible to ignore. Sarah sighed, finally breaking the silence. You know, most bosses don't keep their employees locked in the office past midnight. Nathan didn't even glance up. I didn't force you to stay. She narrowed her eyes. You told me the proposal wasn't strong enough. I said it could be better. Same thing. He smirked slightly, still not looking at her. Then go home, Miss Harper. Sarah gritted her teeth. She hated when he called her that. It was always Miss Harper, never Sarah. Always distant, formal, like he was keeping a line between them. I'll go home when I'm done, she muttered, clicking through her spreadsheet again. Nathan finally looked at her then, one eyebrow raised, dark eyes gleaming with something unreadable. Good. That was the thing about him. He was never unnecessarily kind, never easy. But when she pushed back, he respected it. Minutes passed, then an hour. The numbers on the screen blurred together, and at some point, Sarah's head grew heavy. The exhaustion crept up on her slowly, weighing down her limbs, tugging at her eyelids. She told herself she would close her eyes for just a second. The office was quiet, the chair was comfortable, and before she could stop herself, sleep took over. Warmth. That was the first thing she noticed when she stirred. Something solid beneath her cheek, the faint scent of woodsy cologne and expensive fabric. Her eyes fluttered open, confused, disoriented, and then she realized, oh, no, she had fallen asleep on Nathan Carter. Her body stiffened instantly. Nathan's voice, low and amused, broke the silence. Comfortable? Heat rushed to her face as she shot up so fast she nearly lost her balance. She cleared her throat, straightening in her chair. I wasn't sleeping. Nathan tilted his head, eyes full of something dangerously close to amusement. Right, I wasn't, she insisted, smoothing a hand over her hair, avoiding his gaze. Nathan hummed, clearly unconvinced, but he didn't push. Instead, he reached for his watch, checking the time. Go home, Miss Harper. Sarah hesitated. But the proposal can wait until tomorrow. That caught her off guard. He never let anything wait until tomorrow. For the first time that night, she really looked at him. He wasn't teasing, wasn't smirking. He was just watching her. Her heartbeat stuttered. Dangerous. That was the only word that came to mind. This, whatever this was dangerous. She cleared her throat, grabbed her laptop, and stood. Fine. But if it's still not good enough tomorrow, I'm blaming you. Nathan let out a low chuckle, leaning back in his chair again. I'd like to see you try. And just like that, she walked out. But even as she stepped into the elevator, even as the doors closed, she could still feel the warmth of where her head had been. The envelope sat on Sarah's desk like a ticking bomb. Thick, expensive paper, lined with gold foil. Daniel and Emily cordially invite you. She hadn't opened it yet. She didn't need to. She already knew what it said. Her fingers hovered over the edge of the envelope, but she couldn't bring herself to tear it open. What was the point? Rachel, sitting across from her, crossed her arms and sighed dramatically. If you're thinking of going, I will personally smack you. Sarah blinked, looking up. I'm not. Rachel gave her a look. Sarah exhaled. Okay, maybe I thought about it. Rachel groaned. Why? Why would you even consider it? Do you want to torture yourself? No, Sarah muttered, rubbing her temples. I don't know. Maybe I just want to see. See what? Sarah shrugged. How I feel. If it still hurts. Rachel rolled her eyes. Of course it still hurts. It's not like you stubbed your toes, Sarah. He left you at the altar. Sarah let out a small, bitter laugh. Yeah, I remember. Rachel sighed, softer this time. Look, I get it. Closure, power, revenge, all of that. But showing up to his wedding isn't the move. Sarah nodded, pretending to agree. But deep down, something unsettled twisted inside her. Because a part of her, the part that still had scars from that day, wanted Daniel to see her, to see what he lost, to see that she wasn't broken. But before she could dwell on it, a voice broke through her thoughts. You should go. Both Sarah and Rachel turned toward the doorway. Nathan Carter leaned against the frame, arms crossed, an amused smirk playing on his lips. Rachel scoffed. Of course you'd say that. Nathan stepped inside, picking up the invitation from her desk, turning it over in his fingers. I mean, think about it, he mused. Walking in, looking effortlessly untouchable while he stands at the altar, realizing he downgraded. Rachel pointed at him. You see, this is exactly why men can't be trusted. Sarah shook her head, exasperated. I don't know, Nathan. Nathan tossed the invitation back onto the desk. You do know. You just don't want to admit it. She frowned. Admit what? That you want to go. His smirk deepened. And that you don't want to go alone. Sarah stared at him. You're kidding. Do I look like I'm kidding? Sarah let out a small laugh. And you want to be my date to my ex's wedding out of what? The goodness of your heart? Nathan grinned. I'm just a supportive employer. She rolled her eyes. Right. Nathan shrugged. So, I'll pick you up at 7? Rachel gasped. Are you kidding me? You're going? Sarah hesitated, her pulse quickening. Nathan watched her carefully, eyes dark, unreadable. He wasn't pushing her, not really. He was just offering her a chance to rewrite the story. Finally, she exhaled. 7. Nathan smirked. Wear red. The venue was stunning. Of course it was. Daniel always had expensive taste, and it was clear no detail had been spared. The chandeliers cast a golden glow across the hall. The tables were adorned with fresh white roses, and laughter and music filled the air. And then Sarah walked in. The noise in the room dipped, just slightly, just enough for people to notice. She didn't need to look around to know people were staring. Her dress was deep red, a shade too bold for a wedding, too striking to ignore. It hugged her curves effortlessly, draped in a way that made her look like she belonged on the cover of a magazine, rather than at the wedding of a man who had once betrayed her. Beside her, Nathan looked just as sharp, his suit perfectly tailored, his presence commanding. He didn't hover. He didn't try to make a scene. He just existed beside her, confident, like he belonged there. And then it happened. Daniel saw her. She felt it before she even turned her head. The way the air between them shifted. The way his laughter cut off mid-sentence. She finally allowed herself a glance in his direction. He stood near the altar, adjusting his tie, frozen in place, his gaze locked onto her like she was the last thing he expected to see. His expression was unreadable, or maybe just stunned. His lips parted slightly, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Emily stood beside him, her perfectly curated smile faltering, her fingers tightening around his arm. And Sarah? She didn't even blink. She turned away, completely uninterested, as if he were nothing more than another guest in the crowd. Because as far as she was concerned, that's exactly what he was. At first, Daniel thought he had won. The morning after what should have been his wedding day, he woke up in a luxury hotel suite, with Emily curled against his side. Her golden hair was sprawled over the silk sheets, her bare skin pressed against his. She looked exactly how he had always remembered her. Beautiful, effortless, familiar, and yet something felt off. He tried to shake it off. He told himself this was what he wanted, that he had made the right choice. No more wedding stress, no more settling down with someone safe and predictable like Sarah. Emily was exciting, wild, the kind of woman who didn't expect stability or morning coffee routines, the kind of woman who could make any man forget his worries, at least for a little while. But that feeling of unease never quite left him. It started small. Emily wasn't as easygoing as he remembered. She checked his phone too often. She questioned his late nights at work. She picked fights over nothing. Why didn't he post her on social media? Why hadn't he introduced her properly to his colleagues yet? And when she got insecure, she got mean. "You're thinking about her, aren't you?" she spat one night, arms crossed as she glared at him from across the kitchen. Daniel scoffed, pouring himself another whiskey. "Don't start." "You are." Her voice sharpened. "God, you really thought she'd just sit around crying over you forever, didn't you?" Daniel's grip tightened around the glass, because the truth was, he didn't know what Sarah was doing. He hadn't reached out, hadn't checked, but something about the way Emily said it, like she knew something he didn't, made his chest tighten. He swallowed his drink and set the glass down a little too hard. "Drop it, Em." Emily smirked. "She's doing better than you know. I saw pictures. She looks different." Daniel tried to ignore the way his stomach twisted. It wasn't until a few weeks later that he saw it for himself. He was scrolling through LinkedIn, half distracted, skimming past business updates and congratulatory posts, when her name appeared. Sarah Harper, new position, Carter Enterprises. The photo attached to the announcement was what made him freeze. She was standing beside Nathan Carter, smiling, confident, looking untouchable. His stomach dropped. She wasn't just okay, she was thriving. And suddenly, he wasn't sure he had won anything at all. He reached for his phone before he could stop himself, typed Sarah's name into his contacts. Her number was gone. She had deleted him. Daniel used to think karma wasn't real, that actions didn't have consequences unless you let them, that as long as you moved on quickly enough, life wouldn't catch up to you. But few months after wedding, as he sat alone in his half-empty apartment, staring at the unopened bottle of whiskey on the table, he knew he had been wrong, because everything he thought he had won, he had lost. And then, one day, he came home early from work and found her in their bed, with someone else. The betrayal should have hit harder. It should have wrecked him. But as he stood in the doorway, watching her frantically pull the sheets over herself, all he felt was nothing. Maybe because he finally understood. This wasn't some cosmic punishment. It was balance. He had done the same thing to Sarah, and now it had come full circle. Emily didn't even try to fight for them. She just packed her bags and left like he was an afterthought. And maybe he was. Maybe he always had been. The silence in the apartment felt heavier after that. But the worst part, it wasn't losing Emily. It was seeing Sarah everywhere. She was in business magazines, featured in interviews, standing next to Nathan Carter, smiling like she had the whole world at her feet, because she did. Daniel's career wasn't going the way he planned. The deal he had been counting on fell through. A promotion that once seemed certain suddenly wasn't. His boss, Nathan Carter of all people, had barely acknowledged him in meetings. While he was drowning in regrets and half-finished whiskey bottles, Sarah was thriving, untouchable, unstoppable, everything he thought she couldn't be without him. And for the first time in his life, Daniel realized he hadn't just lost Sarah, he had lost himself. Daniel had spent the entire morning convincing himself that this was a good idea, that Sarah would listen, that she would see him, really see him, and realize they could still fix things. But now, standing in the sleek glass lobby of Carter Enterprises, his palms slightly damp, he wasn't so sure. He had played this moment out in his head 1,000 times. Imagined the look on her face when she saw him. Maybe she'd be shocked, maybe relieved, maybe there would be a flicker of something, anything, that told him she still cared. But when the elevator door slid open and Sarah stepped out, he felt the full force of just how badly he had miscalculated. She was stunning, more than he remembered, confident, untouchable. The version of Sarah he had known, the soft-spoken, predictable, devoted woman who had once revolved her entire life around him, was gone. And the woman standing in front of him, she didn't need him, not even a little bit. Her steps slowed when she saw him, but there was no shock, no warmth, just mild curiosity, like he was an unexpected but unimportant detail in her day. "Daniel," she said, smooth and unreadable. His stomach tightened. "Sarah, can we talk?" She glanced at her watch. "I have a meeting in 5 minutes." There it was. Dismissal. He pushed forward anyway. "Please," he said, his voice lower, rougher than he intended. "Just a minute." Sarah exhaled, then gave a small shrug, like she was indulging him. "Fine. 1 minute." His heart pounded. He should have planned his words better, should have had something more profound to say. But all that came out was, "I made a mistake." Sarah tilted her head slightly, amusement flickering in her eyes. "A mistake?" she repeated. For a split second, something like hope ignited in his chest. But then she gave a small, knowing smile, shaking her head. "A mistake is ordering the wrong coffee," she said, her voice calm, almost gentle. "What you did, that was a choice." Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. There was no anger in her tone, no bitterness, and somehow that was worse, because anger meant she still cared. But indifference meant he had truly lost her. His jaw tightened. "Did you ever love me?" It slipped out before he could stop it. Sarah blinked just once, and then, slowly, she let out a quiet sigh. "I did," she admitted. "Once." Daniel's chest tightened. "But love isn't enough," she continued. "Not when it's one-sided." He flinched, like the words had physically cut through him. She was already turning away when he reached for her wrist. "Sarah, wait. Is there a problem here?" The voice was low, authoritative. Daniel felt the shift in the air before he even looked up. Nathan, standing just a few feet away, watching him like he was nothing more than an inconvenience. Daniel swallowed, his grip on Sarah's wrist loosening immediately. Nathan didn't move closer. He didn't have to. He just stood there, hands in his pockets, completely unbothered but radiating dominance. Sarah glanced at Nathan, then back at Daniel. Her voice was quiet, final. "There's nothing left to say." And with that she walked away, straight to Nathan, without hesitation, without looking back. Daniel stood frozen, watching as Nathan placed a hand on the small of Sarah's back, guiding her away. He said something that made her laugh, low and warm, the kind of laugh she used to reserve for Daniel. And then, just like that, they disappeared behind the office doors. Daniel stood frozen in place, gripping the empty apology in his throat, watching as Sarah walked away from him for the last time. The gala was in full swing, crystal chandeliers casting a golden glow, the soft hum of conversation mixing with the distant melody of a string quartet. Sarah stood near the balcony, a glass of champagne in her hand, watching as guests mingled, as the city lights flickered beyond the massive glass windows. She had been to events like this before, countless times, but tonight felt different. Maybe because for the first time she felt like she belonged, not as someone's fiancée, not as someone's almost wife, but as Sarah Harper. She had built something for herself, and standing beside her was the man who had seen every part of that journey, Nathan. He leaned against the railing, his expression unreadable, the rim of his glass hovering near his lips. He wasn't saying much, just watching her the way he always did, like he knew something she didn't. Sarah arched an eyebrow. "You're quiet tonight." Nathan smirked slightly, swirling the liquid in his glass. "Just thinking." Sarah turned to him. "That's usually my line." He tilted his head slightly, studying her in that way that always made her feel like he saw more than she was willing to show. "You really don't remember, do you?" he murmured. Sarah frowned. "Remember what?" Nathan exhaled slowly, taking a sip of his whiskey. "Your wedding day." Her stomach tightened slightly, but she kept her expression neutral. "What about it?" Nathan glanced at her, then at the city lights stretching out below them. His voice was quieter when he spoke again. "The way you sat there, in that dress, completely still. Not crying, not running, just sitting." Sarah's grip tightened around her glass. A memory flickered, just for a second. The feeling of silk against her skin, the weight of an empty chair beside her, the unbearable silence. Nathan's voice pulled her back. "I remember watching you," he admitted, eyes never leaving hers. Everyone else was whispering, looking away, pretending not to stare. "But you didn't flinch." Sarah swallowed. "What else do you remember?" Nathan turned slightly, facing her fully now. I remember the way you kept your hands in your lap, like you were holding yourself together, he said. And I remember wondering how long you'd last before you finally broke. Sarah's breath caught, and then the memory hit her like a tidal wave. The weight of the silence, the whispers around her, the coldness in her fingertips as she sat, waiting for someone to say it out loud, that Daniel wasn't coming. And then, the smallest movement. A napkin slipped into her hands, a quiet gesture from a stranger. One small piece of kindness in a moment where everything else felt unbearable. Her eyes widened slightly as she looked at Nathan. "You," she whispered. Nathan smirked, but there was something softer in his gaze. "Took you long enough." Sarah let out a quiet breath, shaking her head. I never realized." Nathan shrugged. "You weren't supposed to." Her heart pounded, because suddenly things made sense. Nathan had always been there, not just in the big moments, but in the quiet ones, in the background, watching, waiting, never pushing, never asking for anything in return. And somehow, he had always known she would rise from it. Sarah exhaled softly, looking away for a second, letting the weight of the moment settle between them. When she turned back, Nathan was still watching her, that same smirk playing at his lips. But his eyes told a different story. And as the music swelled and laughter filled the air around them, Sarah realized something. Maybe, just maybe, fate had never been as cruel as she once thought. Would you ever attend your ex's wedding? Let us know in the comments.